You're listening to the Cryptid Creature Show. If you're a fan of the show, go and check out our new Patreon site. You'll get access to our private Discord server, exclusive merchandise, access to all live streams and Q&As, discounts on merch from the Cryptid Creature store, and get a chance to be a guest host during one of the show's recordings. Just go to www.patreon.com/cryptidcreatures1. Thank you for listening and supporting the show.
I'm sitting there in my car. I hear this high-pitched scream, and it just went up real high and come down fast, real low. I'm looking around, and I'm like, I have no idea what just made that sound. So I got my mag light out and shined to the left of me. It was about 50, 60 yards. And when I was shining, I caught two red eyes, and they blinked, and then that was it. I happened to look up in my rearview mirror. I seen a head with like hair sticking out, shoulders, and you could see the arms.
This is the Cryptid Creature Show. I am Brian, and with me as always, my co-host Todd. What's up, buddy?
Hey, man. Tonight's show, we got a little treat for the listeners. We're going to have two guests on tonight.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
As you know, we're bringing Doug and Bill on from Southwest Pennsylvania.
Both with Bigfoot encounter.
They've got some surprise for us, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
That they're going to give to us or show us basically on the recording. So can't wait to see what that is. But yeah, let's bring them on and see what they've got to say about what happened to them in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, man, let's get them.
Doug, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. We know you had a Bigfoot encounter back in the day. Can you tell us when that happened?
September 8th of 2011.
Okay. Take us into the story and let's hear it.
Yeah, just dive into it.
Well, I was a Pennsylvania state constable for approximately 22 years, and I was actually on a warrant up in that area, which was Farmington, VA. And I went after this guy several occasions, and I never got him. But on one occasion, the last time I told myself I was going to be up there, I said, I'm done. I'm not able to get this person. So on my way back through, I noticed construction and everything at this site. I didn't know what it was. I had a construction worker out in the middle of the road waving his hands, had yellow vest on and everything. And he said, I stopped and I said, what's going on? He said, can you please help us? We have somebody in the back here, and we caught him stealing, and can I ride with you and we can go back this road? I said, yeah. So we proceeded all the way back, and there were 6 construction workers with this guy. And this guy was a big man. I mean, a very big man. He had his pickup truck parked next to a big spool of copper wire, which was valued at about $80,000. And he was there, I don't know how long, but he was cutting the wire in pieces and throw it in the back of his pickup. And all he had to do was just take, the rubber coating off, and then he could go sell it. So all the guys got up and we detained him, and I had to use 2 sets of cuffs because this guy was just huge. One set of cuffs didn't work. So we detained him, set him up against his pickup on the ground. And then I called PSP, Pennsylvania State Police. They came about 45 minutes later. There were supervisors there, and they said, we've had incidents before, but nothing like this. Would you be interested in doing security? And I said, sure. I said, just give me a price and I'll tell you yes or no. And they gave me a price. I said yes. And so I went for a drug test that day, and they asked me to come back up that same evening and do night shift. I said, okay. So he said, I know you'll pass the drug test, you're law enforcement, so everything. And I said, yeah, I will. So I went back up that same evening, and it was just quiet, just immensely quiet. You could hear a pin drop on the ground. And so I'm sitting there, in my car, And to the right of me, I'm sitting in the parking lot, are 6 office trailers. And then between the first office trailer and the second office trailer, there's porta-johns. And between the 5th office trailer and the 6th office trailer, there's porta-johns there as well. And right behind those office trailers is Skyline Drive. So I'm sitting there in my car, and I'm just sitting there, just looking at my phone, and I heard like a couple wood knocks. I had no idea what they were. I heard a couple of them, and I'm like, what is that? So that's for the first night. Well, the third night, the second night, nothing happened. I believe it was the third night. I'm sitting there in my car, and it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I hear this high pitched scream, and it just went up real high and come down fast, real low. I mean, just real low, real quick. And I was like, I'm looking around, and I'm like, I have no idea what just made that sound. So I didn't hear anything the rest of the night that night. So then the 4th or 5th night, I'm sitting in my car, and I happen to look up, and in front of me, there's a 8-foot piece of plywood with a telephone pole attached to it. And then that's where all the electrical boxes are for the office trailers. And then there's a halogen light, that's attached to the telephone pole. One night, like I said, I'm sitting there, and 11:30, if I remember correctly, I'm looking at my phone, and I happen to look up, and I see something flying through the air. And I'm like, what is that? Then all of a sudden, the roof of my car, boom. I was like, what in the heck was that? So I jumped out of the car, and I was pissed. I mean, I was pissed. I grabbed my weapon, and I said, if you throw another rock at my car, I said, I'm going to empty a magazine down into the woods. And it was just complete, utter silence, just silent, nothing. Well, and here I am, made, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And I just was like, what is going on here? And it's just like real strange. So after that transpired, and I was still quiet up there. I just had this eerie feeling, like I was being watched. And the next night, I was sitting in my car, and I had this overwhelming feeling. So I got my mag light out and shined to the left of me. It was about 50, 60 yards. And when I was shining, I caught 2 red eyes, and they blinked, and then that was it. I didn't see anything else. So after that, I worked there 2 weeks by myself. I was hiring 5 other people. I was doing night shift, and I was hiring 2 brothers, actually, John Ross and Don Ross, because they've done security since the 70s. So I hired those guys. So we're sitting there just BSing, and I didn't tell him anything about what happened, what had transpired, nothing. So I said, hey, Don, I said, you want to go do the first round? I said, I showed you where to go. You want to go? And he's like, no, I'm just sitting here. He said, if you want to go, go ahead. So I leave, and I come back, and I said, how's things going? Oh, it's quiet. I was like thinking to myself, okay, I leave. He's sitting here, and it's quiet. They're not messing with him. So then he leaves, and then he's gone for like 10 minutes, and I hear, howls behind me. I hear tree knocks, you know, just all kind of stuff going on around me. And I'm like, this is just great. I have no idea what this thing is, but it's only messing with me. So he came back, and then a couple nights later, I left, and I had to go out to a substation out on Kirby Road because that's where they were getting the power sources from the windmills. So I'm out on Kirby Road, and at the substation, and we have two-way radios. And Don gets on the radio, and he's like, "Hey, Doug," and I'm like, "Don, yeah, what's wrong?" He's like, "Can you get here real quick?" I said, "I'm on my way." I said, "You okay?" He said, "Yeah, I think so." So I go flying back there. This is like 6, 7 miles. And I come flying into the parking lot, and he's sitting in his truck, and he's white as a ghost. And I'm like, "What's going on, Don? Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, you did come from that way, didn't you?" And I says, "You saw me." He's like, "Okay." And he said, "Well, come on over here with me." So that night, it was, I think, July, June or July. There was like a dew on everything. And we walked over to the Porta Johns between office trailer 5 and 6. And he's like, "Can you reach the top of that Porta John?" I said, "Yeah, I can touch the side of the Don." I said, "Why?" He's like, "Can you like grab it and pull it over a little bit?" I said, "There's no lip on this Porta John." I said, "I can grab it, up top." He's just shaking his head, and I'm like, "What?" Yeah, we have our flashlights out, and he's like, "I was sitting in this Porta John," and he said, "I didn't hear anything," and he said, "I have my little flashlight on," and I said, "So I could see," and he said, "My Porta John was tipped over this way towards the road and then flung back." I said, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." He said, I was in there. I said, "Okay, Doug." He said, "I thought it was you messing with me." I said, "It wasn't me." So we're talking, and I said, "Well, I don't see anything out of the ordinary, you know." He's like, "Here." He got his hand, and I put my foot in his hand, and he boosted me up, and I looked up top of the porta john, and I saw a handprint. And I was like this, and then scooted back a little bit, but it was a handprint, and it was like 3 times bigger than mine. And I told him, I said, "Don," I said, "there's a handprint on top of this porta john." He's like, "Really?" I says, "Yeah." So I took a picture of it with my old phone, which I have no more. I don't know where it's at, but he, I got down and I showed him, and he's like, what would make that handprint?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." I said, "Something evidently big." So, we just went back, and so September, after that, I mean, him and I were sitting in the parking lot, and we're both facing Skyline Drive, and there's a mountain of dirt behind us. And I happened to look up in my rearview mirror, and this is no lie, I seen a head with like hair sticking out, shoulders, and you could see the arms. And it was standing up behind this pile of dirt, which was probably about 25 feet high. And I told Don, I said, "Hey, Don, look in your mirror behind that pile of dirt." And he looked in the mirror, and he's like, "Oh, what is that?" I said, "I have no idea." I said, "But I'm getting out of the car, and I had enough room to open up my door, and that's what I did. Had my weapon drawn, flashlight out, ran up over top of that pile of dirt. Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So I was in like awe. I saw something. He saw something. We didn't imagine it. We both saw it. So, just stuff. I started hearing like whoops, like back behind me, sitting in the parking lot. And then I heard a couple more screams, from down by Quebec Hollow. So, and we just did our thing. We went and patrolled. One guy sat in the parking lot. The other guy left, and we just did our thing. Well, Don left one evening about, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning, and it usually took like about an hour to, do patrols. So I'm sitting there, and it was 2:30, 3:30. I'm going to say, give or take, it's been so long ago, but it was in the middle of the morning. I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at my phone, just looking around every 5-10 seconds. And like I said, that telephone pole with a halogen light is right directly in front of me with an 8-foot piece of plywood attached to it with the electrical boxes facing me. So I'm sitting there. I see this. I look up and I see this black round object at the bottom of the pole to the right. I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. So it's an animal, or it's a shadow, but I didn't think anything of it. So I look back down at my phone 5 seconds later or so. I look back up, and it's gone. I'm like, okay, well, that was an animal. So I'm sitting there, and 5-10 seconds later, I'm looking around, look back down at my phone, and I look back up, and I see this big black blob to the right of the telephone pole, and it was hunched over like this. And I looked, and I'm like, what is that? And I'm looking, and all of a sudden, this thing stood up. And when it stood up, it stood up. And there's steel pegs on the side of the pole, and its head was probably about a foot higher, maybe a little bit more than that steel peg. And that's for the guys that want to go up poles, climb up the poles instead of going up in a basket. They're about 8 foot off the ground. So this thing stood up, and I looked directly at it. It looked directly at me through my car window, front windshield. And I was like, what is this? And like I said, when it stood up, I caught its full facial. I mean, the whole front of this thing. Black, jet black, cone-shaped head, but its jawline and its head wasn't like as prominent as like a gorilla would be, but it did have a cone-shaped head. And its jawline wasn't as prominent like a gorilla. Its nose wasn't as wide as a gorilla. It was a little bit smaller, but it was just, this thing was immense. I mean, width-wise, this thing was just absolutely immense. I mean, just huge. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, I'm shaking, and I'm like, I am not looking what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a Bigfoot. So this thing took a step to the left, stopped, and looked back at me through my car windshield. And I can just remember the thighs on this creature. I mean, the thighs were just huge. And like I said in my other podcast, you could probably put 2 linesmen off of a NFL football team. I mean, just the immensity of this creature was just like 2 guys put together, if not bigger. But when it turned sideways, I saw its thighs. And like I said, it was jet black, shiny black hair. And it took, after it looked at me, it took 4 steps. And I believe it was like 22 or 24 feet to the first office trailer and 4 steps. Well, me being the person that I am, I jump out of my car after it gets almost to the end of the first office trailer, and the light was shining, but it didn't shine too far back past that. So I put my flashlight up, and I had my weapon out, and I said, hey, and it didn't run, Nothing. It just walked away. And it blended into the darkness so well because it was jet black. All I could see was just like a silhouette. And it didn't run, like I said, it just walked away. So I just put my weapon away and put my hands up in the air, and I just stood there in awe. And so I walked back to my car. I got Don on the radio, and I said, Don, can you get here as quickly as possible? Yeah, you all right? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. I said, just get here. So when they pulled in there, I told him, I said, I don't want to say anything to you. I said, but every time that, I was here by myself, I had strange occurrences happen. I had whoops, tree knocks, screams. I had a rock thrown at my car. And I believe Don did have a rock thrown at his car just one time. But I said, I just saw a Bigfoot. He was like, really? I said, yes. He said, you don't know where I live, do you? I said, no. He said, I live right down below Laurel Caverns, which Laurel Caverns is about the biggest cave system in the state of Pennsylvania. And he said, I've heard the same thing you heard. Tree knocks, whoops, screams, howls. He said, I've heard it all. And he said, I believe in them. That's why I didn't want to say anything because I thought you might think that I'm crazy. He's like, no. He said, I really believe, I really believe that they're real. And I says, well, I can tell you what, from what just happened, they are real. And I said, there's no figment of my imagination, nothing. I said, they are real just like you and I. And I said, and I described it to him, how big it was, gun-shaped head, arms past its knees, jet black in color. Kind of reminded me of like my Labrador. She's got jet black hair and it's short and shiny. Same thing. But I just want to let people know that they're real, just like you and I. I mean, they're not folklore, they're not a myth. They are real breathing animals, and they're real. I mean, I saw it in my own two eyes. Nobody's ever going to change that, perspective of what I saw that night. Nobody.
Did you believe in Bigfoot before this happened, Doug? Did you think about it, or?
No, it never crossed my mind. Never crossed my mind.
You being a state police or a constable, you're a trained observer, so obviously you knew what you saw. Did you think about following it, or what happened afterwards? Did you go back? Were you still doing security there, or?
Well, what happened afterwards, that morning, Donna and I walked over. And where it was kind of like rough ground, but you could see a footprint. And it was kind of like in the mud, but more in the sandstone, but you could get like an outline. And that morning, I got home about 15 after 7. And I just told my wife, and then I typed in Google, people who look for Bigfoot near me. And well, the first one that came up was the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. So I emailed them, gave my phone number, and like 30 seconds later, I get a phone call. And the guy on the other end, he's like, where did you see this? And I said, well, at a newly being built windmill farm up in Farmington, PA. Do you mind if we come out there that evening, tonight? And I said, I'll be there. So they showed up, and there was about 15 to 20 of them. And then they went and broke up in groups of 3. 3 went north, south, east, and west. So there's 15 people or 12 people. So they did what they call blasting. They got responses back from the north, the east, and the south. They didn't get anything back from the west. And this was in a matter of anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds to a minute getting a response back. So they came back about 2 hours. They all came back, and we all congregated in the parking lot. They said, well, we think that you don't have one here, but you have 3, because we got 3 different responses, 3 different areas, and we were like a mile apart. per se. So I was like, oh, this is just great. This is just lovely. I said, I have to work here. And I said, now, I'm deathly afraid to come to work. And gentleman that, I spoke with originally, he said, well, the mail showed itself to you and they're not going to bother you. But he did say that was the most, how did he put it? He said that was the most activity that he's ever had.
You're listening to the Cryptid Creature Show with Todd and Brian. We're glad you're here, and we hope you're enjoying the show. Don't forget to visit our website at www.cryptidcreatures.net. By becoming a member, you'll get access to exclusive videos, members-only episodes, early, unedited, ad-free releases, and even a shout-out on an episode. Join us at www.cryptidcreatures.net, and thank you for supporting the show.
Where are you right now?
I'm at the Bigfoot Outpost at Chestnut Ridge, and it's on Acme Road in Acme, PA. This is Bobo behind me.
Yes, you have a full
Bobo,
life-size
that's awesome.
Bigfoot statue. Very well done, if I would say so, if I would know what a Bigfoot looked like. That's awesome. And you say this is Bill's, your buddy Bill's museum?
Yeah, this is actually Bill's store here. He just sells general Bigfoot stuff, and he's cheaper than anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have an online store? Well, I guess we can talk to him. Do you want us to bring him on too as well?
Yeah, he stepped out for a second.
Okay.
So,
okay.
But I just wanted to let you know that we also have another group. If I can mention that, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's called the Bigfoot Outings and Excursions group on Facebook. And it's like where we take people out on like a hike, night hikes. If people are skeptical, if we can get some callbacks from call blasting, I like to change people's minds, because everyone that's a skeptic, they just want to, oh, they're not real. Well, then when you invite them to go out, it's like, oh no, I'm busy that day. Yeah, it's like, so that's why Bill and I, we created the Bigfoot Outings and Excursions group.
Let's check that out.
That's where we created it. So,
and for the listeners, Bigfoot Outings and Excursion group, check that out, and maybe you guys can get some people to come out and do those with you.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. Bill's right here if you guys want him to come on.
Sure. We want to thank you for coming on before and
oh yeah, for sure,
telling us that amazing encounter. And
that's one I'll never forget. So, but gentlemen, thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate your time.
We thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All righty. Here's Bill.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was. We got Bill coming on now. Hey, Bill.
There's Bill.
Hey, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. So you started your museum store there. We want to talk real quick about Bobo behind you. Bobo is how tall?
He's 8 feet.
Okay. Did you make him? Did you get him from somewhere? How did you get a hold of him?
There was a studio in Columbus, Ohio, Unit 70 Studios, and they made them. They do a lot of props for the Hollywood movie industry, amusement park work, and things of that nature.
How long have you had him?
August of last year.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool. Yeah, he's definitely what I would imagine a Bigfoot would look like if I saw one in the woods, I guess.
Yeah, he's as realistic as you can get. He's got alpaca hair, latex skin, glass eyes. I mean, he's taxidermy quality.
How much does he weigh? Do you know?
Does Bobo weigh?
Yeah, is he heavy or
100 pounds, I would say.
Yeah, they make him out of lightweight foam, probably.
Yes.
So tell us before we get into your store and museum, what made you start it? What made you begin the store?
I've had a lifelong interest in the Bigfoot mystery and my brother, he owned some rental property here up on Chestnut Ridge, and he was looking at getting rid of some of it. And I knew that the property was 3 acres and it had a house on it with a trailer, a garage, and a small retail store. And I said to the wife, I said, as far as a retirement place to live, I said, if we bought that place up, I said, we could turn that little retail store into the area's first Bigfoot store. My wife, she's not a Bigfoot enthusiast as I am, but she's a good wife and she supported me. And we ended up buying the property in January of 2022. I had most of the pieces, like the chainsaw carvings, the wood cutouts, bird houses, all sorts of things I'd made over the past several years before I even had the idea to buy the store, which was kind of weird. It was like it was for a reason. And eventually I just started taking on more, like my brother, he does carved stone. Friend of mine in Elk County does chainsaw carvings. I started to buy those. So I began featuring a lot of handmade items from local artists. And then eventually I had T-shirts made, hats, stickers. Then just started to buy like a good bit of novelty items, pocket knives, and just different metal signs and different things of like that. But it's been fun. It's been a lot of work, but it's a retirement project that's in the making right now, while I'm still working.
Yeah, and something you can enjoy too, Maybe if we're in that area sometime, we'll definitely come check you out. Can you tell us
for sure.
where are you guys located again so the listeners know?
The Bigfoot Outpost at Chestnut Ridge is located in Acme, Pennsylvania, which is in Fayette County. The easiest way is the Pennsylvania Turnpike to Donegal exit and take 31 west, approximately 4 miles.
I'm sure a lot of people are around that area for that resort. Have you ever seen a Bigfoot or had any experience with any kind of thing? You say you maybe have heard some yelps and some knocks or something?
Yes, I actually had 3 separate experiences.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Let's hear them.
The first was in August of 1990 in a fire lookout tower in northern Idaho. A friend of mine named Mark, he and I had heard about this tower because I had been out to Idaho the previous summer in '89. And the fellow that I was staying with out there told me that the Forestry Service, they rent these fire lookout towers for recreational purposes. And a lot of people that will watch like electrical storms, bird watchers, stargazers, all kind of people rent it. It's a good remote location at the top of a mountain, and you can just see for absolutely miles and miles. I could see actually from Deer Ridge Lookout Tower, which was the name of it, I could see into British Columbia, the state of Montana, and the state of Washington. Because it was way up north in the Panhandle in Idaho, about 13 miles south of the Canadian border. But we had heard about this. I made contact with the Forestry Service and booked a reservation for August of 1990. It was for 3 nights and 4 days. So Mark and I, we went to the ranger station to pick up the keys to get into both the access gate at the bottom of the mountain at the Forestry Service Road, and then also to the catwalk door, the trap door on the fire tower. So the ranger handed me the keys, and he said, when you drive through, make sure that you pull that gate closed and lock it, because there's no other access point on the road itself. Like, it doesn't intersect with like a public road or something like that. It's just strictly an access road to get up to the lookout. So it took about an hour and 15 minutes, as I recall, to get to the top. And it wound from one ridge to the next, and it switched back. And it was a beautiful trip. And the road, it ended right at the tower. So we got out, set up everything that we needed, unloaded the truck, and had a wonderful time. The first night it was pretty uneventful. Second, during the day we did day hikes. Second night was uneventful. Third night we were cooking pork chops in one of those little Coleman stoves. It looks like a little metal suitcase. Cooking pork chops and just throwing the pork chop bones over the railing. We shut the lantern out after we were done and turned in for the night. I slept on a bed. It was like a cot, but it was more like a bed. It was connected to the floor and to the corner, into the walls. It had drawers underneath of it. My friend Mark, he slept on an air mattress on the floor of the cabin. The cabin itself was, I should say, was 14. It was 12-foot square, 14-foot square, something like that. 2.5 to 3 foot sidewalls all the way around it, and then glass from there up. 4 flights of steps to get up to it. It was a sound structure, roughly 40 feet tall, I would say. So we were cooking cooking pork chops, throwing the bones over the railing. Turned in for the night. 15 minutes after the light goes out, I could feel something at the bottom of that tower. It was making it tremble. You could feel it. I was stretched out on my back. I mean, the whole length of your body, you could feel this. It was faint, but it was definitely a tremble. It would come up and it would stop. It would pause. And then you'd feel that trembling again, only a little bit more solid, a little bit more firm. Another pause. And then you'd feel it tremble again. Well, we could tell the pauses were when the visitor was on the landing, on one of the landings on its way up. So I said to my buddy, real low whisper, I said, Mark, I said, do you hear that? And he said, yeah. And both of us are looking at the glass where a man that would be, say, 5 or 6 foot tall would first appear as it was coming up the steps. And you would look and you could see far to the left is where an average sized man's head would appear. This didn't appear far to the left. It was far to the right, which meant that whatever it was only came up 2 or 3 steps and its head was already visible in the glass. And I could hear this loud sniffing, a smelling noise. And that unnerved me so bad I couldn't take any more of it. Swung my legs off of the cot, cocked an 870 pump shotgun 12 gauge, and that spooked the thing. It turned around and it was trying to be sneaky and stealthy on its way up. It wasn't worried about that on its way down. That whole tower was just a trembling. I walked out of the cabin door and went right to the left and was looking over the edge, waiting to shoot whatever was going to come out the bottom. It never came out the bottom. It went down, it went down the top 3 flights and it went over the railing, directly behind where I was looking. And it never came out the bottom. We never went to bed that night after that. After seeing the size of the head, the silhouette in that glass, and where it appeared too, that's what really blew our minds. Because we knew for this to appear where it did, in line straight down, it was only on the 2nd or 3rd step, and it was already visible. We couldn't. It was wild. I mean, it was really, really wild. The next day is the day we left. It was the final day. We went down. We tried to find tracks. We couldn't see no evidence, no clues, no nothing, because it was pretty hard rock strewn all over the ground. It wasn't soft dirt. And that was it. We loaded up the truck and headed on down to the mountain and went right to the district ranger's office to turn the key in. And he asked if we had a good time. And I said, yeah. And I told him, I said, we had a visitor come up. And he looked at me, and I could tell by the look on his face and the grin he had But we weren't the first people to rent that tower that had a similar experience. He knew it was something else.
It sounds like the Bigfoot had heard that noise before, the racking of a shotgun, and knew to get the heck out of there, apparently, right?
Yeah, that's what I think. Because we, like everyone else, right after it happens, your mind has to rationalize what was this. So you go through like a process of elimination with the indigenous animals to the area. Well, right off the bat, it had to have considerable weight to make that tower tremble like it did. I mean, considerable weight. And so you can start out with the animals that are native to that area. All four-legged hoofed animals, grass eaters, would not come up steps. They wouldn't be enticed to the smell of meat. They just would have nothing to do with going up a flight of steps. I don't even know if they're capable of going up a flight of steps. So quickly, we rolled out moose. There was moose there, elk, and I'm not sure if there was mule deer or not. But it definitely wasn't a four-legged hoofed animal. Mountain lion was the next one. Now they could be stealthy and creep up those steps, and you'd probably never feel it or hear it. But a mountain lion, in my opinion, doesn't have the weight. I heard that a big cat, they're just under 200 pounds, is a big one. It would not have made that tower tremble like this did. And that left two things left. A bear. Well, a bear would make that tower tremble. A bear would be enticed by the smell of those pork chops. And a bear would even stretch out and appear in the glass where we off the second or third step. It would appear in that glass. But I don't believe that a bear would be smart enough to retreat down the top three steps and go over the railing instead of out the bottom flight of steps out on the ground level, because it knew it would have been peppered. It would have been shot. And it was right. It would have. So, yeah, I think that we were definitely not the first people to encounter that. We didn't feel threatened. We weren't scared. It shook us up. I mean, we were certainly surprised because as remote of an area as this is, and as far as it was from civilization, there was no way or reason anybody else would be up there.
Yeah, that's interesting that the ranger knew about that. Was just probably hoping that people didn't experience it. It's funny that they don't say anything. They don't want to scare people, you know?
Yes. See if that register, that guest book is still there. Because I remember when we left, my friend Mark and I, we filled out, made comments in there. I don't remember exactly what it was worded as, but I remember making reference to an unexpected visitor up there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm sure they keep those.
They probably put a new guest book out after that.
By now, it would have been 33 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. When we came back to Pennsylvania, Mark and I, we told people in Pennsylvania, and they were kind of like, most of them were kind of like, yeah, okay, all right. No, Doug is right. They are as real as you or me. They're without a doubt. I mean, and no one could ever convince me different.
That's awesome. Yeah, man, that's great.
That is.
Now, the second encounter that I had was in exactly 11 years later to the month. It was in an abandoned tunnel, part of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, the Laurel Hill Tunnel, I believe it was called. It was a 1.3 mile tunnel that they had shut down. They had shut it down in 1967 because traffic would go from top permissible speed and bottleneck at the entrance of the tunnel, which was only 2 lanes, and it would create traffic jams in the summertime. So in 1967, I believe it was, they built a 3-mile bypass going around that tunnel, and then they closed it down, and the Turnpike Commission used it for storage, like they stored road materials, salt, and whatnot inside of it. I heard about the tunnel in one of my hiking journals because I've spent years and years backpacking up here in the Laurel Highlands. And one of the maps that I read mentioned that this particular trail goes over top of the old abandoned Laurel Hill Tunnel, which was part of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Well, I thought, wouldn't that be neat to find that tunnel if we could and get inside of it and see what's in it, just to explore. A friend of mine and we went into this tunnel. His name, too, by the way, was Mark, which was really weird because both people that I went with were named Mark in the month of August, and it was 11 years apart to the month. But this fella, his name was Mark, and I said, let's get up and see what this is all about. So we found the tunnel, and they had salt piled up at the entrance of the portal where we went in. But outside of the portal, all around, it was completely deserted. I mean, it didn't look like there had been anyone there for years. So we began climbing up over the salt and got to the top, and you had to walk really hunched over because the ceiling of the tunnel was rubbing your back. We had backpacks on, and it was rubbing the backpacks. So we're walking across the salt, and it ran out after about 30 or 40 yards, and we got down onto the original pavement. We had flashlights with us, and they were pretty bright. But when you would turn them on, as hot as it was outside in August, and as cool as it was in that tunnel, it created like a fog similar to like your high beams in fog. You're better if you don't have your high beams if it's like a low beam. So really bright lights weren't really that much use in that tunnel. At the far end, you could see just the tiniest pinprick of light. And that was the opposite end of the tunnel, the portal over there that was letting, sunlight in through it. But it was a good ways down there. And we started walking, and we heard a piece of wood hit the pavement. I mean, and it sounded like a plank that came from above, like a plank sounds when it falls off a lift or two of scaffolding and hits like a concrete driveway or blacktop driveway. I know that sound. I've been in construction for a while. But it was weird. Like, what would a piece of wood be doing in a tunnel? They didn't construct tunnels out of wood. It was just us. It was out of place. But nonetheless, we continued walking. My friend, he's really good whistling by putting two fingers to his teeth and whistling really, really loud. And we were doing that as we were walking really slow down that tunnel, and just the echo from the far end, it was incredible, the sound of it. And we kept on walking, and I turned to my friend Mark, and I was just about to tell him to whistle again. And we heard this roar, Todd. It sounded like a lion in a zoo, like it had the lung capacity that it just cut loose down that tunnel, and that sound, it just went right through us. Well, we didn't waste the time looking at one another to confirm what we had heard. We both turned around and we ran. We ran for our lives. We didn't know if whatever it was coming down the tunnel after us, or if it was just trying to make us vacate the premises. We took off and ran back to the salt pile to try to get up back on top and get out. Well, as we get to the salt pile and trying to climb it, it's caving in on us. We couldn't really get like a foothold, because I guess when the salt would get wet, it would form like a crust on the outside of it, and that was crumbling under our feet. But we finally got back up on top and ran all the way across the top of the salt pile out in the sunlight, and boy, our adrenaline was really pumping. I mean, our hearts were pounding, our mouths were dry. We were scared. We got the hell scared out of us. I don't know what it would have been. I mean, for a black bear to stand its ground like that when it had a way out the other end didn't make sense to me. And because the sound didn't come from, it sounded like the far end, but it could have been closer towards the middle. I believe that a bear would have just turned the other way and yielded and would have went out the other end. Whatever roared at us had no intentions of yielding. It wanted us to yield. And we obliged it. We did. We got out of there quick.
Black bears, especially in your area, they're not going to hang around. Every time I've seen a bear anywhere, it's gone. It doesn't have anything to do with people, and it's not going to defend its territory in something in that situation, I wouldn't think. And I don't think a bear would reside in an area like that when people would be coming in and out to get supplies or whatever.
Yeah, it just didn't make any sense to us. I mean, it was creepy. I mean, when we were in there, it was like a crypt. Like it was almost like someone, like we were the first people to be in that, which I'm sure we weren't. But it gave the feeling that, wow, we're the first persons to be in here in years. Um, but it was remote and secluded. It would have made a pretty good hideout, at least for the day, for anything that was seeking, relief from the heat.
Been a perfect location for a Bigfoot to hang out.
Yeah. The third experience that I had happened here in October of 2020. It was in Quebec Run, which is not far from the windmill farm that Doug had been speaking about. I had some time off from work and wanted to do basically a 2-day, possibly extended into a 3-day backpacking trip, choosing a different site each night throughout the wild area. 4/10 of a mile was all I had to go in on my first night. I had a pretty good idea where I wanted to set up, but I'd never actually been there. So I went in, it was October, so it got light out or dark out, fairly early. So I wanted to make sure that I got in and got set up before it turned dark on me. I found the spot that I wanted. It was near a creek off a Mill Run Trail in Quebec Run, 4/10 of a mile from the parking lot. A hemlock grove right next to a creek, really pretty. I thought this will work. So I took the time before I set the tent up and went over the ground where I was going to set up and policed it for sticks and potential kindling and stuff like that to get my fire going. There was an existing fire ring already, so I used it. After I got the ground somewhat cleaned up, I set up the tent, got the fire going, and it was like a feeling of being watched that so many people had said before. It does. It descends on you. You can feel it. It's heavy, and it almost makes you just like want to look around just to see. But it's really futile because there's so many trees, so many places that anything could hide. And the fact that it's at night out and you're building a fire makes you even that much more visible. So it was really it just didn't feel right. So I thought, I'm going to let this fire, I'm going to let it burn down. I just don't feel right. The safest spot that I felt safe, and this was like actually kind of funny, I got down on one knee and was like kind of hiding behind my tent. And I looked at my watch and it was only 7 o'clock at night. And I'm thinking, I have 11 to 12 hours down here. And this is already freaking me out. So got inside the tent, laid out my air mattress, didn't get undressed. I figured I'm just going to chill out in the tent and take in the sounds, try to calm myself down. Well, I did it. I calmed down after a while and was just laying there. I hear sticks getting broken, snapped, right outside the tent. I could hear a snap, and it was about 2 seconds later, something hit the tent. I'd hear a snap, something would hit the tent. I'm like looking. I didn't make a sound. At this point, I was pretty worked up. Snap, something hit the tent. I'm being as quiet as I can. I didn't want to vocalize in any way or scream or gasp or anything for fear if something is right outside the tent and I make any sudden noises, whatever it is liable to attack or freak out. So this went on for a while. It probably went on for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, this stick snapping and something hit the tent. So I stayed calm, stayed inside the tent. I hear a crack like you hear when a logger takes a chainsaw and he goes through the bottom of the tree, that initial crack, that loud crack that you hear. I heard that out, but it wasn't sounding like it was only 30 yards from the tent. I heard that crack and something hit the ground. I don't know if it was a tree that was pushed over. I don't know if it was an overhead limb that fell down. It may have just been that tree's time to fall over. I don't know, but it's still at that point, after 7 sticks hitting my tent, little sticks, it sounded like, maybe no bigger than a school pencil. And now it's changed locations and pushing trees down is what I'm thinking. So I thought, no, that tree could have just fallen over. It could have just been its turn to fall over. The hours passed like they were days. It was, I didn't want to get in the habit, because at that time, all I had was a flip phone. And I didn't want to, because wasn't wearing a wristwatch at the time. I do now, because cell phone service isn't all that great in a lot of places you go. So I have to wear a wristwatch so I know what time it is. But at that time, my flip phone was my watch. And I had it in my thigh pocket of a pair of cargo pants that I was wearing. So I'm laying on top of this sleeping pad, boots on, fully dressed, with a mummy bag just pulled over top of me like a comforter, like you would. I didn't want to get inside of this mummy bag and get myself all constricted. So every so often I would check to see what time it was. And I didn't want to get in the habit of doing that, like, oh, it was only 15 minutes since the last time I checked and saw what time it was. I didn't want to keep doing that, but I wanted to know how long it was for daylight to come. So what I'd have to do is pull it out of my pocket and slide it up my chest and tip it up and flip it open and then close it, because I didn't want the light from that to illuminate the inside of that tent. I mean, that's how, you're just trying to be cautious. So finally, daybreak was coming. You could tell it was coming through the tent a little bit. So I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to get out of here. So everything that I could do inside of that tent, I took everything in from the night before, stuffed into my pack, did everything I could, rolled up my air mattress, got that into the pack, got the sleeping bag all ready to go, unzipped the tent, looked outside. Here's sticks, freshly broken, all the way around my tent. And they were not there the night before, because I went around that tent and I picked them all up and I burned them. And those were fresh, broken sticks. I heard every one of them break, and I heard every one of them hit that tent, and they rolled off in a different direction. And there they were, right at the base of the tent. That was all I could take. I got out, pulled that tent down in record time. Normally, I'm pretty particular about packing and wiping the stakes off, getting the dirt off and everything. Those stakes come out of the ground. They went in their little stuff sack. That tent just got flopped over, shoved in its bag, loaded up the pack, and away I went. I got back to the truck, and I'll tell you, I was never so happy to be alive in my life. I mean, the sun by that time was coming up, and it just came through that windshield. It just hit me. I was happy to be alive. That's for sure. That unnerved me so bad. I have not gone out solo camping since. I'm going to have to deal with that in my own way as time goes on, because I'm not going to let that experience deprive me of what I really like to do. So Doug and I met, we formed the excursions group. The two of us now have gone out, and it does feel better, safety in numbers, I'm sure. When you're alone in the woods by yourself at night and it's dark, if you've never felt or gone through that experience, it's something I think everybody should go through at one point in their lives.
Well, Bill, we want to thank you for coming on as well. We really appreciate it. Tell us real quick one more time the name of your museum and store.
The store is the Bigfoot Outpost at Chestnut Ridge.
So if
Awesome.
Listeners, if you're in the area, be sure to stop in and say hi and see Bill and see Bobo.
And tell them you heard him on the show.
All right, well, with that, we'll wrap it up. Bill, Doug, both of you guys, we appreciate your stories and telling us your encounters today.
Yeah, we do.
Those are awesome. We love hearing them. You guys get out there and keep looking, and if something else happens, get in touch with us.
Okay, sure. The opportunity you gave us to share our experiences.
You're welcome, man.
Oh, yeah. That was our pleasure.
All right.
Okay.
We'll see you guys. You take care.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you both again.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, before we got Doug on the show, I didn't realize that he was a constable or a police officer there in Pennsylvania.
I didn't either. That's kind of cool.
It is cool. I always like talking to those guys, military, police, what have you. The more credible, I guess, people, why would they come on and try to ruin their career and say something like this?
Right, exactly.
It was cool having Bill on, too, and talking about his experiences and encounters. And,
It was. That was a nice treat having both of them on.
And Bobo, the Bigfoot.
And the Bigfoot in the back, that was cool.
That was really cool.
That thing was really realistic looking.
Yeah, it was.
So if you don't watch the videos, you won't see it. So you got to watch the video so you can see it.
That's right. And if you want to catch the video, you can go to our Patreon and check that out. There you can sign up and get these videos and see what we're talking about in our recordings, and get exclusive videos. And there's different levels of memberships.
And you can get some really cool stuff if you sign up.
Yeah, get some merchandise, your choice of merchandise on different levels. And you can also be a guest host on our show if you'd like to be on that level of Patreon as well.
So check it out.
Yeah. Hang out with us and interview the guests.
And ask some questions.
Yeah, see what goes on behind the scenes. So
absolutely.
Thank you guys for listening as always. Brian, thank you for hanging out with me, my friend.
Oh, yeah, always fun, brother. Always fun.
All right, with that, we'll get the heck out of here. What do you say?
Yep. See ya.